What is going on? What is going on, people? It is Community Beacon. I promise you, this is gonna get a lot cleaner as we go. I just know it. I have a feeling that it's on the way. I'm Palm Beach Mike. Of course, we have my brother from another mother on the other side of the screen, the incomparable Joel Simmons. What's going on, brother?
What's up, my man? It's good to see you. How am I coming through? Am I delayed a little bit? All
Might be a
right.
might be a slight delay, but it sounds a lot better than it was before we started.
Man, soon as that thing started counting down to let me know that we were going live, all of a sudden the ocean started to rise and my face started to freeze. I said, "Good God, we've been working at this for 15 minutes now."
Yeah. Ready or not, here we go. What's going on, man?
Sitting inside the old lab, catching up on a little bit of work, knocking it down one item at a time. That's what it says. That's what it is. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm blessed, man. I'm blessed. First week of school is in the books. So excited about that. Shouts out to the young men that are getting up and moving. Elijah, oh my gosh, I can't say enough about the young brother. I came out of the room, I think it was like Thursday night, and he was washing clothes. And I was like, man, I never washed clothes when I was in high school. And he was in there washing clothes, cleaning up his room, preparing for the next day. I'm like, oh yeah, I appreciate that. Here's some more clothes for you to do. Here's some stuff that I have. So as you wash clothes, I appreciate it 1000%. But like as a father would do, I'm gonna give you some more stuff. Oh, you should always ask, hey dad, you got anything else in there that you probably want to get washed? Because I'm trying to get some stuff done. So it was delightful seeing that. And then the young man, Paul, starts school on Monday. So yeah, he's starting kindergarten. I'm excited to see him do that. That was an interesting. That was a, that's a there's an interesting story, and I'd love to get into it. But
Yeah.
yeah. So that's my week. That's my week. But Paul starts school on Monday, so I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see what happens. You know what I've noticed, especially with the young men and really just myself in general, because I'm sure I was like that, at that age, was the different identities that they develop as they start to go out into the world and interact with people that aren't necessarily their core group, their core family group. And a while back, I remember Elijah, and it was something I really had to come to terms about. It was something that was like that I noticed where he had like different identities. So there was like an identity here, there was an identity at school, and then there was then an identity at his mother's house. Just from even his tone of voice and the way that he would, reply or answer. And so when I started noticing it, and initially it was like, you know, my first thought was like, just be yourself. And I'm like, what am I asking of a young man? I probably noticed, let's say I noticed it at like maybe 10, 11, or 12, and I'm asking a 10 or 11, 12-year-old to be themselves. They don't even know themselves. There's a lot of adults that don't know themselves. So how could I have expected it from Elijah at that age, or the way that I was asking him to be? Because really, when I said be yourself, it was like, why aren't you like the way you're with me around everybody else? Right? Why don't you be more like the way that you are with me? So when I think about it now, as I go back and do some introspection, and the expectation of who he was. What was so and I'm really thinking about this now because I was thinking about this earlier, and it has to do a little bit with the expectation of how I wanted that individual to be. And I didn't know how I processed it at the time, but there was like a grieving of my son's not this way all the time. Like who knows if he's putting on for me, if he's putting on for his mother, if he's putting on, like, who knows which one is like his, quote unquote, true self. But this is the way that he is because probably wanting to, it might be like a way of coping with something, right? Like I have to be this way with my father, right? There's a safety thing in if I perform in this way. And I'm not saying that this is Elijah. This is just me having this thought in my mind. And then if I'm with my mother, right? Because a lot of I've noticed, especially people who become people pleasers, they attempt to change their way so that it's really an emotional safety thing. So they're attempting to caretake people, right? Like if I show who I really am, will this person accept me or will this person see me? And so, yeah, so it's interesting that those three things happen. So I'm getting to Paul now. So Paul will start school on Monday. And this is probably like the first structured school system that's away from his mother and away from me. And I'm it's going to be curious to see. And I'm really, since I'm at such a different place in life or a different way of thinking, I'm so excited to see the way that what he becomes. Like, what's his personality and how he develops. And then, just watching him and being there for him in his fear. So Monday is going to be an awesome day. I'm probably I know I'm the most excited out of the bunch because I'm like, man, my young man is, or this young boy, because he's 5, is because is starting his journey into himself, and I really get to sit down and experience it as I started to slow down on life. So yeah, brother, that's what's going on for me this week.
That, that's interesting. I think that I've been thinking a little bit about like the whole identity thing and the being piece. And so, I mean, I'm excited for your excitement, and the exploration of working with Paul and seeing him grow. I think that the conversation is, I've got a lot of things that just kind of poured into me. At the same time, I started thinking about my boy Jonah, and I started thinking about my wife and my daughter, all the people that are just inside my household, myself. And I started thinking about all that stuff, like these things that you're discussing. And I know we talk about identity frequently, it seems like, but it's just really interesting. And a thought came to my mind as I was thinking about this. And it's a thought I believe that I've been thinking about for a couple of weeks now in different contexts, but in this context specifically is there more than one identity, or are there different characteristics that expand when an individual is in a different environment, right? Like, is that a different identity, or is it the same identity but different personifications of an individual's individuality? And that was something I hadn't done like the deep research on it, but it was just like one of those things where I just pondered for a moment, multiple times, I suppose. And it was interesting that you kind of brought up this conversation, and it took me back to like that pondering, that pondering of, is it really a different identity? For that matter, if we, here I go with the collective, if we as the people, the collective, if we never defined identity, would all people just be? I know there's more to that, but let me just leave it right there.
So when you say, will people just be, I guess we can go deeper into that part. Like, I mean, even when we start talking about identity, I know I have my thoughts surrounding it and how I've come to understand how we develop. I guess the initial question is almost really like a nature versus nurture thing. And then there's also this what some people will call a blank slate theory, right? Like, so people will say, okay, when you are born, as you come into this world, that everything from that point on would be, essentially you would be nurtured or socialized into what's going on in modernity. That plays a huge part. Environment. I've noticed that there's, that I really have a list. If I were to go back to my frameworks about how our environment and what's happening in modernity, how that kind of puts us on a pathway. And I mean, it's pretty accurate. Probably there's a lot of science around our environment, right? And our lifestyles, our culture, an environment plays like one of the biggest parts, both inside of your home and outside of your home, like where you live, how you experience things, and then how do you present, just getting back to safety and protection and making sure that you are, everybody wants to be okay. A lot of us like live our lives. I heard someone say last night, we were finishing we met as a group for the Great Decisions course because we did it again independently. And one of the things that someone mentioned that everyone was resonated with a lot of people was like trying to get from one safe space to another safe space. And so so we're being hyper vigilant and we need all this information and we need in order for us to get to here, but we want to get to there, but we need to do it safely. We need to land safely, one safe path to another safe path. So, but we get a chance right now to kind of get a deeper understanding of what it is that makes us us, and is this a different presentation? I think it's for me to especially speak is in this intimate setting that you and I have here. We get a chance to just feel what that looks like. So for you, what is it? Is it, how do you really experience it? Do you experience it yourself or do you experience one identity just expressed differently? That's probably the most important thing.
This time in this period of my life, believe that from time to time I will use identifications, classifications to mean conversation with somebody. Maybe I want them to understand a specific personality trait or understand maybe a backdrop on my history. So those identifications are there to help me to give knowledge to somebody else, a message to somebody else that maybe they can decode and understand the things that I'm not saying. When I say it's like, I'm a black man, that gives some bit of knowledge to somebody else. And of course, they're going to have their understanding of what a black man is, looks like, sounds like, whatever that is. But it's like, that's what the identification, I'm a Christian, right? And that may give somebody some type of idea on maybe what my beliefs are. Maybe. This phase of my life, identification it's important in those aspects a lot more than it's important in my own personal mind. Joel, that's who I am. I'm Joel. I think that even that still is like, to a certain degree, it's kind of an identification of what has been passed on to me, right? It's the narrative that I was given. It's the title of the book. By the way, congratulations on your book, brother. How to Sell Your Home for Top Dollar.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah, yeah, that's been sitting there for you see it in the background.
I see it in the background. I don't think I recall us talking about that.
Yeah, that's years 2019, 2020.
Cartoon character face comes from. Did you
Yeah.
design it just for the book?
No, that was prior to that. I just added it on. It does, yeah, I appreciate it. I love that, because this can be a super deep conversation. And it's reminded me of maybe about a week ago, Sunday or something, someone brought something up to me, right? That we were having this conversation, is what we call a view conversation. And in the view conversation, man, this guy, man, shouts out to Max. So we were having this conversation. Who hopefully I get a chance to talk to him later on this evening. And then we brought up something that happened a long time ago, which I was like, yeah, and this, not to say that it wasn't something that I resolved. Had a lot to do with my father and growing up. I think I maybe was around 6 or 7, and the interaction that we had, and a lot came out of that. A lot of stuff reflects back to that time at around 6 or 7 with my dad. And so Max said something to me to where it was like to truly have been seen in that moment. Something that I just tend to shrug off and, deal with. And it's just, at some point, it just became a matter of fact. Like this happened and it was a matter of fact. But Max said something that allowed me to be seen. And in that moment, which was so dope for him. And I think a lot of us, well, there's a place where a lot of people can't take a certain kind of anger, right? Like, I remember growing up, there was like, oh, you having a temper tantrum. It was like rage. And I think it can be scary for a lot of people. But when you're around someone who allows you to have that, and you allow yourself to have it, but definitely if someone points it out and allows you to have it, it hits a little differently. And what that actually was a something that wasn't moving, right? Even though I was able to deal with it, I was able to move forward with it. There was a certain emotion that was not moving. It was just there. And for someone to be able to allow it to be was so cool. And so that I think we had that conversation maybe like on a Thursday or something, Thursday or Friday. And Sunday, it came to my mind again, and I just sat down and I did and I'm calling it anger, right? And because I'm like you, brother, when you talk about like these different, what I would call labels, like we say something in order to communicate it. So I'm just communicating you with you guys that a person could call it or label it anger. I'm at the point where it's just emotions just are that. There's something in my body that's moving and there's feelings to it. There's physiological feelings to it. There's, these different things. We can label it. Sometimes I label it in my mind as something just because I'm having a conversation with myself, or maybe I'm having a conversation with AI or someone else. And so I'll name it something so they can kind of get the flavor of it. But, Joe's anger or rage or whatever feeling is possibly going to be different from my anger or rage or feeling. And then the way that he expresses it, how he expresses it, and how I expresses it, how I express it, but there's a certain flavor in my mind to anger. Most people seem to have similar flavors to this thing. And so I had this feeling and I'm like, oh yeah, this is perfect, right? Like I'm searching for like these different feelings to do what we call an emotional inquiry on. I'm like, oh yeah, it's like real and alive in my body right now. So I get a chance to sit down with it and welcome it and feel it and allow it to move to get to the point of it. Is that I sat down there and I had an emotional inquiry, because that feeling, or that feeling that I didn't allow to move, became an identity, or became a way for me to cope, or defensive things. So anything that came up that was similar to it, I would have this automatic pattern. Like you're really in your identity, or I've noticed that a person becomes in their identity when there's this it just automatically comes up. And it becomes so sophisticated that you don't even notice it. Even when a person becomes, quote unquote, and because we're having this conversation, a person becomes passionate, they may start to talk different. If you go back and watch a lot of Community Beacon episodes and I start to become passionate, it's just this automatic way of expressing passion. And passion can be expressed a million different ways. But then we get into these certain patterns because it's comfortable for us to do it. Maybe it allows the people around us to be comfortable. So I get to this anger, and that's something that we can look at in regards to anger or whatever it is, because sometimes we have a certain way of expressing it, and it may want to be expressed differently, and we may feel like this is not the time, place for it, because maybe I'll scare someone. Like imagine you're in your car, you just scream and somebody happens to be walking by as you're releasing something, and they look at you crazy, right? You may start to take notice, and you may say, I need to hold it in, or whatever. Anyways, when I did the emotional inquiry and I was allowed to move it, I probably had like one of the most blissful moments. And I can't even explain it, because it probably would take away from what it was. And in that immediate moment, in that moment, there was like this real deep connection with myself. And this has been going on for maybe almost closer to 2 weeks, where like a lot of things and my relation to them have changed. So when we talk about like when I think about like what is our identity and what it is, I think our identity tend to be like these patterns that we've developed consciously, sometimes unconsciously, because there's times when something's happened to me and I've consciously made a decision to, never allow this to happen to me again. That's one way to do it. Or I, you know, that's usually how it starts. But there's times when it's unconscious, where I didn't even know it happened. I didn't pay attention to it, and it kind of just crept up in some kind of way. And until I did some real introspection on myself, did that actually start to say, "Oh, okay, I can see how I got into this pattern of behavior, and I can see how I've started to identify with this way of living, this way of reacting, this way of expressing, and maybe it serves me right now." Like it's serving me, right? This is helpful to me. And then there's times when it's like, okay, I'm at this same point. This pattern has served me, as far as I'm concerned. But perhaps there's like more to reveal to myself if I change the pattern. Like, what would that look like? Like, how is this pattern also contributing to what I'm now calling like my full life? And if it's not contributing to my full life, what's preventing me from changing it? Is it fear of what someone else may think? Right? We all, a part of us wants to always be close to a group, especially a group of people. Will someone think different of me if I change this pattern of behavior? If I'm no longer this identity, if I no longer identify? So if I don't have this identity, am I still me? I would argue that you're probably even more you than you were before, as a part of living this full life. I do know that moving that anger and doing that inquiry and having that blissful, peaceful moment does contribute to the joy that I'm currently having in life right now. I do know I was at the gym today and my father, I just sat down and was just like kind of just thinking about my dad and like his face and how we look similar and like the love that I have for him and my admiration for him and the conversation and the love and the connection that we have in the conversation. We had one maybe a couple of days ago and we were on the phone for like an hour and a half, and it was just because he had came. It was for no reason. We didn't have any, similar to kind of what we do here on Community Beacon. We didn't have really any thought out thing that we needed to get accomplished or get across, more so than just to sit and just resonate and have and experience each other at where we are at in life right now. As opposed to, today I was thinking like, man, a lot of people we normally do like the conversation that me and my father have regularly are the type of conversations that people have at like at the person's funeral once they're gone, right? Like all of a sudden you started to notice that this person is gone. So now I get to talk about this person in such a way, right? There's no, oftentimes there's like no negative things to be said. And we're just talking about a lot of the positive things that is how this person contributed and what was in their life. And so that further got me thinking, and I'm rambling a little bit. I'll let you jump in, brother, real quick. Was about that way of thinking, which the pattern, which I would have called my identity of this son who's, I still loved my father, but just had something there, which is anger, whatever it was. It's not like he wouldn't allow me to get it out. My dad has been so awesome in his growth at 70 years old, or at least I'm allowing him to be, right? Because possibly before I wasn't even allowing him to be that. I still had to grieve, or there was some sadness about that Mike being gone, right? So, but at this point, it's like grieving or being sad about that past Mike, whatever it was. I used to say like 2.0, 3.0, whatever. So whatever Mike that was, it's not the same Mike. The Mike on that Sunday, I'm no longer the Mike that was the Sunday before that, right? I've noticed that. So I had a chance to like grieve and be sad with that. And even grieving in the sadness and in the, I'm just labeling these things. There's still joy in that, because there was like this joy in it. And you said something earlier, like this expansion, right? This expansion of expanding into like this bigger thing where I get a chance to really be authentic and take space in a different kind of way, showing up in a deeper and more vulnerable way. I don't think I would have had this conversation a month ago or 6 months ago, although we do tend to have some super vulnerable conversations on Community Beacon. If you guys are looking and watching, definitely if this resonates with you, put a comment in. Definitely want to hear about it. But it's just this way of just being of where I'm just taking up just this different, authentic way. And man, I'm just really, really enjoying that feeling in the now.
First thing that comes to my mind, I guess, besides the notes, and I'm just like my little one-word notes that I got in front of me, was just like this space. Not that creating a topic or a subject for us to discuss isn't relevant or good or positive or strong, or that we can't deliver something that is authentic or deep thought. It is. But some of these conversations where we are literally showing up like, hey, what do you want to talk about? And maybe it's the last thing that we say before we jump on air, Or maybe it's the first thing that we start talking about after we are on air. And that just leads us down this pathway of this open, vulnerable, I love the word choice that you use, conversation. And it seems to just open up like this spiritual connection to, to God, if you will, apologetically, right? And it's almost as if the words that are being said they're like food for the soul, right? And like I said, unapologetically, I'm saying this, right? So if it doesn't fit somebody out there in this vast world, then it doesn't. But it's just like, man, it's like this spiritual connection that just begins to happen. And quite frankly, I have noticed that with very few people, very few. I don't have a long list. I can't count how many people there is on one hand that have had this type of experience with, where the conversations will begin to open up things that are on the inside, thoughts, perspectives, places where I may be stuck, or places where I may be looking to go, or considerations that I'm looking into or even battling with. Once again, there's so many different type of labels for me to attribute these processes, these thoughts, to give somebody indication of what possibly I may be speaking about. And still, this conversation may elude so many people. And the bottom line is, what I'm saying is that the openness and the authenticity and the desire to just be here and allow for what to be simply makes room for what is to just appear. And that right there is fascinating. It is simply fascinating. The recall that comes up and the use of what examples you may give and how they have an impact or an imprint inside of my heart, my mind, my thoughts as I'm moving forward. And this one conversation is a microcosm of all of the different things that I'm made up of and everything that's going on inside of my life. And yet still there are these little things like buttons or triggers or cues that are just like popping up, just like left and right. And it's just like, boom, you start to see it and you start to understand it, and it gives you these clues. And it's that part right there, that if somebody is out there and they are just like here to just be a part of the community, just a part of the conversation, that I believe even in the essence of them just hearing what we're talking about, especially when we go live again, that they will actually be a part of what we are discussing, whether they are phoning in or texting in or DMing or whatever, because it's so much larger, right? It's just so much larger. The way that it happens is just so real. And I think you used the word visceral earlier. It is just so, man, it's more than what a label can accomplish. It's just that, man. And there's just very few conversations that have had that type of opportunity. Yeah, I got all these notes, bro. But go ahead and say what you want to say. I feel like we're in something.
We're in something. We most definitely are in something. I think these conversations really it speaks to like a deepened connection. And I was listening to a video earlier, listened to a bunch of videos earlier, and some of the
Bro, I can't hear you at all. Lost your connection. I can't hear any volume.
mic check.
I got you. I feel like I'm froze, but I hear you.
Yeah. There's something going on with this. Let me see. Maybe if I leave this, I wonder if I could try something different. Are we good? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, man. I don't care about static. I just want to hear what you got to say.
Yeah. I don't know what you were able to catch, brother. I was talking about. I was listening. I was watching some people that I highly admire and respect earlier, and just in the conversations that they have. and they give you a lot of the knowledge and information. Like it's right there. And they have the ability to make it so simple to where, you don't have to have a super high intelligence to kind of really grasp what they were saying. But you do have to be open to it. You do get a chance to be open to it. And I think that's where the, disconnection happens. But past that, because we were talking about this moment, like we're in it is, and I didn't say the word visceral, but you did. And it's an awesome word like this. And so I would relate the visceral to like the gut feeling of a thing. And so there's like this really at a certain level when we're allowed to kind of have these deep and vulnerable conversations and put it out on the table, so to speak, and allow it for it to happen. A lot of people don't really get that. A lot of people don't really have what I've noticed in my experience. They don't have people in their life that they can go to and would just allow them to be. And after so much of it not happening, at what point do people kind of just shut off? After that real super deep moment on Sunday, that feeling of like whatever it was happening, like I was like in this trans kind of place. I went to the gym. And I'm just like looking at people in the face. Normally when I go in the gym, I'm like head down and I'm doing my exercises and I'm not there. I know people are watching me work out in the gym. They're like, what is going on with him? Like I'm just in the zone. Sometimes I'm just staring off into the sunset. Like my mind is just gone. I'm really allowing myself to be in the gym, like doing what I'm supposed to do. Hey, sidebar, I'm down 8 pounds in the last month. So just putting my information in the just tracking, right? We're just tracking it. So and I appreciate the applause. And down about 5% body fat too, so which is the more important part to me. I really didn't want to lose the weight. I just wanted to lose the fat, but that takes time. That takes time. So I was in the gym, and it just so happened on that Sunday, and it still was a great workout as far as I was concerned. But I was just in there, like really just connecting. So even like the simplest conversations were just bigger than what they were. People just started coming up to me and asking me different questions, and I'm answering them, that kind of deal. And it was just, everything just seemed bigger. But I also noticed, and I was aware of the amount of people that really, like all of us in this place, and we really don't connect. There's active avoidance of connection. And I can see that. Right. And because I've done it where there was this active avoidance of connection. Oh, I'm not going down this way. This person talked too much. I'm going to take the back way, or I don't want to go past this person. But I'm just noticing. So I'm just like, even growing up as a child, especially in the environment, we speak about this experience, and you grow up in a place that could be hostile or is filled with scarcity. But from time you're born to you're 12 or 14, think about what that does to you. Think of what kind of identity you start to take in. Think about the connection that you have with the people around you. I noticed that a lot when I was at the center. I couldn't really identify it at the time or say what it was, but I did notice. I'm like, well, why does this person talk like this when I'm around or when we're together, but then we put them in front of different people that they're not used to, and then they shut down, right? So the connection is there, but this happens. This just doesn't happen to one group of people. It's across the board. Like we're actively out here. We're more connected technologically wise than ever, but we're more disconnected than we've probably ever been. Even and in some people's households, they're experiencing this. So I'm at the gym and I'm really taking notice to this. I've noticed it before, but that Sunday it was on a different level. And so I leave the gym and then I go to Costco, which I was there today, and it was just a different experience. And now I'm in Costco just looking at people. Like I'm just walking past people and I'm looking. There's a part of me that's like, you look like you gotta look like a fool. That's the brain talking. That's the head. That's the voice in my head saying, you look like a fool. And I'm in there just like, I don't care. You called it like a spiritual thing. This is what I call the heart opening. It's a heart awakening is what I call it. And it's just like, everything's just so expansive. So I did not have not one person that was not a friend in Costco. Even if they were trying to be like avoiders, it was just like, nah, I'm still here. How are you? You know, like that's kind of like I'm walking through it. I'm just like, this is totally like out of bounds. And I'm in there and I'm just like, yeah, I'm just not, there's just something here. Like I'm here for a reason and there's something here. I don't know what it is. And I'm not gonna force it. That was the next part. Like everything is just happening at once. This is not, these different experiences. I'm still getting cut off in line. It's Sunday, so people are, it tends to be super busy on Sunday. So people are like, I always say Costco is like the most dangerous place in the world in Palm Beach, on Saturdays, Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings, because there's so many people in there and they tend to be so aggressive. So I'm walking through and I'm like, man, like there's just so much connection, but there's something here. And so I get my stuff and I'm leaving and it's raining. And I got my cart and I'm going towards the car and I just see somebody walking towards me in the distance. And I'm like, that's Coach Tom, the old boxing coach from the Power League. I hadn't seen Coach Tom in like 11 or 12 years. And he's an older guy. So Coach Tom's probably in like his 80s. And I remember his wife, she was going through something at the time, and I hadn't spoken to him. And he actually is the one who connected me with my first investor, like for me specifically in real estate, was Coach Tom. He invited me, and I remember Coach Tom. Like I remember even back then, I asked him like, why did you connect me with this person? He was like, he said something to me like, I can just tell, I can just see talent. Right. And that was like, whoa, getting back to the dad thing, if you want to really delve it deep into that. And so I'm driving, like, that's Coach Tom. And it's raining. And this is an older guy and he's walking towards me and he's not supposed to be out in the rain in my mind, anyways. And I'm like, Coach Tom? And he's like, he looks up, he's like, Mike. I'm like, this is incredible. Like, and then we start to having these and it's raining, and his wife drove like by, and I know she gave me like a look, a look that I looked at her, and I was just like, why do you have my son, my husband out here in this rain? And Coach Tom can talk, and he's just giving me compliments. And he's talking, and we're like, we need to get together, and we need to have a conversation, and so on and so forth. And it was just so, what's the word? Some people would say the word that's coming to mind, anyways, which is the perfect one for now, it was the synchronicity of things, of this connection thing, and of all the people that I could have came across, of all the things that I could have did. It was like this connection with Coach Tom during that time. And to me, like that just speaks to the expansion. That speaks to whatever a person would call it, the universe, the consciousness, the plugging into, once you get to plugging into, and things have just been happening that way since then. Like I'm not putting forth, I have an identity of willing things to my way. Like I'm gonna make this thing happen the way that I want it to happen, right? I have all the skills, the capabilities to do it, but I was just like, but what would it look like in my life currently to kind of just allow these things to happen, to be fully in connection, to be fully, in this way and allow, my father would call it nature to happen, nature to run its course and just be in awe of what exactly is going on and to be open to what is going on. Like that speaks for me, like that speaks to the deeper thing, like what would happen if we took a look at some of the things and maybe, like I said, me willing things, what some people call discipline or willing or whatever it is, like that, it works for me, right? So the scary thing would be for things that are currently what I think in my mind work for me is to say, well, let's look at this experimenting and give this thing a try of where we're allowing these things to happen for you, this bigger force to happen for you and with you, and you have the ability to experience like life in its fullness as opposed to life in my little grind time. Yeah, I don't even want to call it rigidity because it's not really rigid because I'm enjoying it. But if I just allow this stuff to happen on my journey, what am I not allowing to happen on my journey? Because I've said that this is the way that it should be, or this is the way that I should be, more than likely, not what it should be. It could be whatever it is. And then I'm just making the adjustment so it fits how I want it to fit. This making this puzzle piece fit into what it is. And instead of just allowing it to happen and really looking at my wants, like is my identity, you speak often, or you said before, not often, but you've said before, brother, like your desires. So what if I have these desires and these wants? and I'm not even allowing it to, I'm not giving it space, right? There's no space because there was no expansion. I was really constricting and restricting the thing because I'm scared of what may happen, right? There's a fear of what may happen. So I'm really acting in reaction to something that I don't want, as opposed to moving towards things that at the moment, I believe I want. And I heard someone that I highly respect also say that you should not have expectations. I think we should have expectations. I don't think we should be attached to the result of the expectation, or we have a chance to grieve and be sad about it not ending up the way that I exactly wanted it to happen. But what else is in store for me? Because there could be something bigger that I don't even know of. Like I don't even know what the next step could be. Like it could be something that's so much greater and bigger, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be, what's the flavor of this positiveness, but it could be something that just reveals me to me. I could be at a point where I'm just revealing me to me. And I think ultimately, like, that's kind of what I want. I want the full revelation of Mike. I heard there was this, and I'm going to butcher this quote. I think it's a Jewish proverb or something. They were talking about the humbleness, and it was like humbleness is like a person who takes their place, what they were meant for. They take their place in the world. Like I just want to take my place in the world, whatever that looks like. Whatever, a person is destined to be in the fullness of it. Like, can I have that? It doesn't mean that this does not mean that I want to be famous. This doesn't mean that I want to be wealthy beyond all means. This doesn't mean that there's a bunch of materialistic or whatever it is. There's just this fullness of who I am, whatever that is, in totality. And I allow for that to happen. And for that to happen, some of the things that I believe need to happen have to fall to the wayside, or I can't be super attached to it. Here's a question I have. I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
Continue, please.
So the question, I appreciate it because I'm cutting you off. I do, brother. I do appreciate it. I'm really speaking to people who are tired. Like I just have this feeling of when I noticed it, and maybe that's because that monkey is no longer on my back, or that chip, or that boulder, or whatever it was that I was pushing. That chip that I had. My gosh, man, I love my father. But the chip, like there was a chip. There was something there where there was this. I need to prove myself in some kind of way. Like I need to prove something to somebody. Like people have to see this, or at least they have to. They're gonna feel me. Like whatever it is. And at some point in time, there's just like this, even in what we would call success by any means, it's a heavy thing. There's people who are super successful and they go home and it's a heavy feeling, right? It could be a heavy feeling. I'm speaking to people who resonate with that. Like if you have this heavy feeling, you have this chip, you have this thing for validation, you have this thing to please, you have this thing to control, you have this thing to push beyond all pushing. And I see you. I see you. And we all have our different opportunities and choices that you can make, and it can happen at any point in time. It can happen in all different kinds of ways. I'm just speaking to how it happened, for how it's been happening to me, and probably for a long time now, because I think a lot of things have changed. But this opening of a thing of living, just living, and the being. If I'm going to speak to identity, like just being in your being and taking your place in the world, whatever that looks like to you, and it satisfy you and who you want to connect with and have relationships with, for me, it just took like a really deep understanding and really a stripping away of a lot of these different things that I would have called my identity. All right, I'm done.
Say that. I think that there's a lot of things that you said, if you will, if I were to break it down in segments between you and I speaking, then not this segment, but the segment before, there was a bunch of things that came up there, and I just thought that they're really interesting. And I think that you went deeper into that conversation, and just some of those things that I really took out of that, like place, allowing anger. I thought that was really, really insightful. And you said that not just now, but, you're just talking about, being in a space where people will allow for it, if they'll allow for it, or if you'll allow for it yourself. And you kind of went down that discourse. And I heard residue of that in just this last segment of conversation that you were delivering. And it's not that it has to be anger. I think that it's about being at the infinite level, if that makes sense, right? At the most infinite level, which we know would be no level. It'll be all levels. So, but that thought process right there was it really stuck with me. And I drew from that because you were mentioning on multiple occasions environment, and you referenced your father, and his words. I think it was something like, let nature take its course or something like that. And that environment. And then just right now in this last segment, just speaking to those, insert what you were stating, people, that allowing piece is something else, isn't it? If you can get around people that allow you to be, right? I agree with that, allowing the anger piece, but allow you to feel joy, right? And you mentioned that too about emotions. So no discreditation in here. But it's just like allowing for an individual to simply be. And I thought about that. I was like, how do you open the door to being, like free flow, teaching that, delivering that, being that person so that others would feel like they are free to be. Like it's like this really, really freeing thought. And I love how you also, I don't want to use that in my mind, but you also had like a kind of like a compare contrast. These are my words, compare contrast, in this being, but you started to mention about the discipline or will, right? And there's this crazy balance inside of the world, right? It's like the world is free spinning on an axis. It's like, how does that even make sense? If it's free spinning, but it's on an axis, which means that it has a point in space. And in that point in space, it is allowed to free spin, but yet it's still on the axis, which it is disciplined to follow. And there's like this balance, right? There's this strange balance in life where there is a portion of these disciplined actions that lead us to this freedom. Paul had stated on one occasion that the bond is free and the free is bound. And it made perfect sense to me, right? It made perfect sense to me, especially when I got to the point where I was at my last job, and it felt like I was bound to the point where I felt like I was locked up, right? And so when the day comes that I am like freed from this feeling, this emotion, this pressure, now I'm able to just do. And in that moment, well, maybe not in that moment, but soon thereafter, that freedom is like, well, there's a price to this freedom. And the price to that freedom is the supplementation of what I was bound to. And so, the increase of income, right? So like I was bound to a work that I was no longer feeling free at. And in order to free myself from the work, I then became free, until the realization you still have to produce the provision, and there's a bonding of that. And so I don't know if I'm explaining this at my highest level. I feel as if I am, but maybe I'm not. And so like there's this balance between being bound and being free. And what makes something free also binds it to the thing that it is now free to. And what makes it bound also frees it from the things it was not bound to. And it's just, it's like a duality of nature, you know? It's a duality of nature. It's like I can freely be myself, but then I'm bound to freely being myself, right? Or I can walk in a certain way that I am accomplishing things specifically accordingly with, I'm going to use that word because I'm not finding another word, discipline. Like, I'm ensuring that I am doing A, B, C, D, and I become bound to doing A, B, C, D to produce whatever the result is. And that frees me from something else. I don't mean to make this confusing for anybody at all. It's just the duality of nature is just what I just started thinking about in this entire thing. And how, going back to another part of what you were discussing, Mike, how this creates patterns, circles, cycles. And one of the things that I had learned from you that I listened deeply is, and you all can go back and see it inside of the old community beacons, but Mike, you had talked about being, what discipline meant to you years ago. And then you talked about discipline slightly different. And I thought that there was a change. And then today you mentioned discipline and I heard something different. And I'm honestly just enjoying all of this because there's just so much learning here. And again, Mike, I believe you. I believe that the percentage of the opportunity of you understanding what I'm saying with these words is high. I don't know if I'm delivering this in such a way that many will be able to understand what I'm saying, but I believe that you do.
So let me ask you a question. Because you spoke to the word, and I love to hear. There's something about that word, and I think there's a charge there. Not for me anymore. There used to be, but with in conversations, I've noticed that there could be a charge to the word, and even an attachment to a thing. So I want to get more wondrous around it from your point of view, because it sounds like you believe, or you're saying, I don't know if you believe it or not, but you're saying that you feel like it's needed some kind of way, like there has to be discipline specifically for that word. And there was some other words, but one thing at a time.
I only use the word discipline because I couldn't think of another word to explain exactly what I'm saying. So I don't think that discipline actually does it justice.
And then so that being said, what I heard was that there are speaking to the job, there was and I'll just make it plain, 'cause that makes it easier. That a job has a certain salary, right? That's there. As long as you're in that job, you have that salary, or that's what's supposed to be given to you. And if you leave that job, you're leaving the salary. And then you mentioned provision. So in your mind is like you have to make up for that salary in the job, like that the result of the job, having it.
So that's an example of the things that we believe we are freeing ourselves from tend to bind us to something different. And the things that we believe bind ourselves tend to free us from something different. So it doesn't necessarily matter about the job, right?
It does if I'm asking about the specific example, just to make it plain, right? Like I'm not the smartest person in the world, so I'm really just trying to get a clear understanding of a thing and not necessarily it to be, super vague. So I was searching for something specific. It would still be A plus B equals C. The formula is the same, but if we just put something like specific, it would probably help me understand.
Yeah. So if you were to use like work, then if you're bound to work, right? If you're bound to work for whatever the reason, and this is to consider that the binding is something that is non-freeing. Does that make sense?
It comes with it.
Right. So, so if you're bound to the work and it's non-freeing, right? And meaning that it's something that you don't desire, something that you don't want to be a part of, something that brings you angst, something that brings you frustration, something that feels heavy in a way that's not negative, but in a way that doesn't, you just don't want to be a part. It's binding in that sense. Then freeing yourself from that binding, you're free. It's over with. And if that thing is work, you're no longer doing that work. You're free. Now, the feature of the work is that you get paid. Well, hopefully, it may be volunteer work. And this example may not apply in the same way, but it could, because it doesn't have to be about money. Payment could be something else that is valuable to an individual, right? Like status could be the payment. Now, when you're free from that work and you don't get the status or you don't get the money or you don't get the opportunities that you once were getting because of the work, in order to get it, or at that moment, without it changing anything else, you become bound to not having the money, the status, or the opportunity. So now you're free from the work, but now you're bound from not having those three things, if you will. It doesn't mean it has to stay that way. It can be just a thought process. It can change just like that, right? But that give and take is happening so frequently inside of the lives of people. Some people will never see it. But if it is only just for a moment, it's happening. It's like this give and take. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so interesting. In AOA, we would call something that's similar to something what they call the golden algorithm. And it's kind of like where something you realize you come to this awareness that this, in this case specifically, this job is no longer serving you. And then honestly, even if it's the money involved or the status or whatever it is that a person may be doing, the juice is no longer worth the squeeze, so to speak. Because if it's a job and they offer you more money, are you going to keep it? You know what I mean? Like, if they say, all right, listen, we'll give you more money if money was the thing, or you believe money to be the thing. Are you going to keep it at that point in time? Or have you realized something in this pattern of this job that's bigger than whatever the money that they could, or the status or whatever it is that they could provide for you? Like there comes a point for that. I think a lot of it is like, to me, it is like really just false and it's illusionary, because when you go into the new thing, you didn't really deal with that first issue that you were actually dealing with, or really come to terms with it. That's what I've seen in my experience, is that a person doesn't really come to the terms with whatever it was, right? The money, especially the money or the quote unquote reward or the status, is super illusionary. Especially if it's attached to the thing, like it's really not real, right? Then that's really what, in my mind, what gets a person to kind of start saying like, this is not worth it. Like this is not, this doesn't make sense. But I'm thinking that the thing is the job, and it's not. To me, it's not that. There's something a little bit deeper, and this can go into like a really super dope conversation, because this is what I almost call like the corkscrew, right? Like we tend to do things in patterns, which we brought up before, which kind of defines our identity and who we are, and we still have these patterns, right? And then it goes into the A framework. And then we become aware of something. Like, I'm not taking my full, which really what it is. Because if you could take your full place in the world and still have everything else that came with it, that part wouldn't really be a problem. Like whatever it is, it's not really a problem if you can just show up in a way that it's like I can fully be whatever it is that I am. But what I'm doing is I have to abandon myself in order to accomplish this. My gosh, I'm about to tell you something real quick, guys. I'm
It,
getting something.
you're on it. That's it. You're right there. That's it. This is what we're talking about.
We are going. Think about how fast life is happening for you, and if you've ever said that, think about how when I hear someone say that life is just it just went this fast, or I didn't even know what happened, or whatever it was. That means that we weren't really experiencing a thing. We were kind of abandoning ourselves and allowing that thing to happen. This happens slightly different for a lot of different people, but it ultimately is that there's a part of me that was abandoned. So when I show up to that job to get that paycheck, which I believe I need, I have to have it. It's not a habit, but I have to have it. When I show up there and I'm just going through the motions of the thing, and people are saying things to me that I don't particularly like. There's certain things that just don't quite make sense, and this thing is happening. At some point in time, time after time, we can shut ourselves off to all of that and just essentially we're just going through the motions. I'm just showing up and I'm here and I'm just doing what I got to do. Or, I remember people say, just keep your head down and just, allow these things to happen. So you're not, and it's less about other people seeing you, more so about you not seeing yourself. Because if you can see yourself in that time, there's a litany of things that could happen. Like you can really process a thing and you can come up with super different strategies and tactics and different things. But other than that, like you're not really so you're really just it's a lot of it is about a certain kind of self-abandonment that we have for a thing. But because that money is what it is, and people will continue offering or keep dangling carrots in front of you in order for you to continue doing a thing, right? But at some point in time, some people we can tend to get this awareness like, hey, this is not it. So now here's something that a person could do is like, well, how can I allow myself to fully be me in this thing? And here's the thing about you being fully you, and this could be for the job, this could go be for a relationship. Because it's really the same thing. But it could be for your job, it could be for a relationship, it can be for a whole different set of, situations or situations that you're going through. You can show up to be yourself fully. And the people around you can choose to either allow and see it, or they can allow and say, like, I don't want to be a part of it. That's a hurtful part for some people. Is that if I am myself fully, and maybe it was like, I started off a certain kind of way, and over the time I've grown, or I've started off as a different kind of way, and I just wasn't aware of a thing. I want a chance to be myself fully, and allowing them to say, or your job to say, hey, we can't, Joe, you can't show up like that, or Mike, you can't show up like that. Yeah, Mike, you can't wear your hair like that. So for some people, it'll be that way, or you can't.
You can't run around the job naked simply because that's who you are.
Right, that's who you are, right? And they are allowed to have that. They are allowed to have that. Guess what? If that's fully you, and I like the naked example, so I'm gonna use that. There are a bunch of different nude colonies and groups and places. I just saw Broward. I think there's a restaurant in Broward County or something that's allowing for you a nude night. You pay $200 and you go to there for a nude night and you eat your dinner, and there's a bunch of people it's sold out. So those people are out there. But if you want to continue being here and you want to give up that part of yourself, because that's really what we're talking about, because it really gets past the money or the whatever or the status, whatever it is. It's really about if you want to give up yourself for that, and that happens all the time. Like I would argue that it happens more times than right, because people are going to constantly tell you that same thing. Are you willing to do that? And then if you are, do it consciously, right? Do it consciously and take agency, take accountability for that. Take accountability for that. Take accountability for staying. Take accountability for giving up yourself. If you feel that that's right, I'm not here to tell a person what's right or what's wrong. I'm just telling you that you get a chance to do that, and then you can weigh it and you can say, yeah, I gave that up. That was I no longer wanted to be fully me here, or maybe. And here's a beautiful thing: is once you start to get in view with yourself, vulnerable, impartial, empathetic, and in wonder, you'll find that you can have it all. You could. It may not be exactly the way that you wanted it to be, but then you start to notice that there's different kinds of options. I can, if it's a volunteer work, I can still come here on certain times, but I'm going to be spending most of my time doing this. I'm going to decide that I'm no longer going to want that job. but then I go to this nude colony or this nude thing and I meet somebody and they're like, listen, we're fully accepting you and I have a job and position for you. It could happen that way. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but it doesn't matter because ultimately you're fully being your own self. You're fully being you. And it's for me, that's everything. For some people, it's not. So for some people, it's like, this is that. And that might be fully them too, right? I'm not here to pass judgment or tell someone to do it like Mike, like or be like me. By no means. I lace my shoes up just like everybody else, put my pants on just like everybody else. And so we all have our different ways but we all have our different journeys. But I'm at a point where I'm conscious of it. Like I'm just conscious of a lot of these different things. And then from the consciousness, I found so much freedom in being able to make these different decisions. Right. And I'm going to bring it back to this discipline and this willpower thing. When you're fully enjoying a thing, it doesn't even become that. Look, think about when we were kids and did you say to yourself, I have to go out here and play basketball today with my friends. I have to be in this hot sun today. It wasn't until I joined the team that I was like, oh man, I got to go to practice. Practice. And then I could have probably made that fun too if I imagined, if I was fully conscious of it. But there was a time I could even imagine, I even remember then is when I kind of disengaged from myself because it was, I'm learning of the ropes of what it's supposed to be. I'm trying to fit into a group. So I decided at one point in time I wasn't fully experiencing myself, and I could have. It still would have been the same thing, right? I would probably been a fuller life. But we learn, we live, we learn. We get to enjoy those mistakes. It got me to where I am now. What a blessing. It got me to have this conversation. I was on the phone recently with a friend and we were talking about some things that that they had gone through and what I had gone through. And then we just stopped and we smiled and we just started and I'm laughing. I'm like, listen, if all that didn't happen, you and I wouldn't be having this moment right now. And I'm loving this. If everything didn't happen before or what people are going through, I wouldn't have this moment that I'm having now that I get to share with someone or get to share with myself. Right. I'm hoping that you all like laugh and dance with yourself and enjoy yourself and are in complete love of who you are and what you've become. That's a part of it. Right. Stripping away a lot of different things. It's like, I'm actually in love with. I'm gonna grieve some of this stuff I'm losing, that job, that person, that situation, that whatever it is. I'm gonna grieve it a little bit. There's sadness to it. There was some great things that happened at that job, right? Like I think about the city. I was ready to go. I was ready to go. It was time. I just needed the right Drake song at the time to come on, and that was it. For me to hand in my resignation. And the right song came on at the right time, the perfect time, and I was right for the picking, and it was time for me to go. And I had to grieve it, and I was sad, and I tried not to, and I had anxiety, and I had panic attacks behind it. That first couple of months, because my identity was tied to being in this thing. I came home and I told my mother, and she said, "You're not doing what? Like you have nowhere to go when? Monday through Friday, you don't have any place to go? Yeah, I don't have any place to go. So what are you gonna do?" Right? And it gets to portion of it. I know you weren't talking about this, brother, but I remember this time because I remember having a conversation with Beethoven just around that time. I told Beethoven, I know how I am. I said, so I'm going to be busy just for the sake of being busy. And I really get a chance to take a look at that. I remember telling Beethoven, like, I know I can just get busy. I can just start doing stuff and I can do it well. And it can look like I'm super doing it, but I get to take a time. And it wasn't until years later I would even say just who knows, NLP amnesia, but like in the last month, the amount of slowing down I have done without shame and guilt is just incredible. I'm not shaming and I'm not guilting myself. I'm not needing to have to correct myself about certain things. The amount of just like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like, I don't want to do it. Like, I'm not having that happen. I'm not doing it. And it's probably been going on for longer than a month, but in the last month, I'm definitely shining a light on it. And the amount of things that just have happened and occurred because of it. Maybe I lost money here. Maybe I made some money here. Maybe whatever it was. But the enjoyment I'm having, right? Just to be in that space. And we you, me, whether you believe it or not, I believe it for you, is that we do get a chance to have that choice, right? Like we do get a chance to say, okay, some of this stuff is creeping up on me, my old ways, the voice in my head, right? Some of the voices in my head are saying like, you should be doing this, right? I start shoulding myself. You should be doing this. This is the time that you need to be doing this. Like, why aren't you doing this? Like, get up and do this. And I'm not perfect because sometimes I do follow it. It's there, right? I do give it a chance to talk. And then there's times when it's just like, yeah, nah, I hear you, but nah, not today. Yeah. And even, and here's the thing, people will do it to you too as well. People will tell you what you should be doing, how you should be acting, how you should, whatever. And you get a chance to say, yeah, I can take that into consideration. Or sometimes some of the easiest way is just not even to respond. Sometimes just ouch, ouch, right? Like someone tells you something, ouch, right? That way there's really no back and forth about it. You hurt something in me. Let's table this for a minute, ouch. Right. I got it written down on my wall right there. It's called, I got ouch, just in case I forget. Someone says something that I'm just like, yeah, ouch. So we do get a chance to, well, I get a chance. We get to do whatever we want to do. And for me, like, this is the freedom. This is the agency. This is the full life. This is the stripping away of the identity. And this has been a fruitful conversation. I think I'm done.
I think we're going to leave it there too. I enjoyed the close.
Yeah. People, we love you. We do. I 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 do enjoy people. I'm really enjoying people in this moment. And I'm excited about being here each and every week with the brother as well. As we walk this thing, man. As we walk this thing. All right, people. It's Community Beacon Friday. I guess we'll see you next week, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. Peace.